other members are on their way and will join as we go along. You notice our committee clerk, Ms. Hunter, has her mask on, notwithstanding feeling a bit under the weather. She has made the effort to be here to support the committee, and I want to acknowledge her commitment to the task. This morning we have the review, the major item to be discussed being the roofs program, and secondly the solidarity program, both which fall within the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. We got their report rather late. I gather it just came in this morning. It has been printed and circulated, but members will have it for reference when we invite the representatives of the ministry to come and give us a brief on the matter. But before we invite them in, I would ask that we move to item 5, the reading and confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on April 29th. And if we move to that, I just go page by page. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, pages 7 and 8. If there are no corrections, then I ask for a motion for the adoption of the minutes. Mr.
I so move.
And Mr. Hines seconds. Thank you. Matters arising from these minutes. I don't see anything here that would require further discussion, except where we had decided to invite 2 ministries to attend. For this meeting, we only have one because the Ministry of the Housing Agency of Jamaica was unavailable for this meeting. What I would suggest is, have we found a mutually agreed date for them to? Right, but I don't want us to invite them for a meeting and then hear they're unavailable. So maybe we would pick a couple dates and then for them to come to the first of it. So can you say what are the next available dates for the committee?
So we have the 17th, June 17th.
June 17th.
24, July 1. These are Wednesdays.
Okay. So June 17th, and if not the 17th, the 24th, for the Housing Agency of Jamaica to appear. All right, agreed? All in favor? All right. Could you invite now the representatives of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security to join us? And we will move to item 7, the matters to be discussed today. The first, the restoration of owner or occupied, or rather, or occupant family shelters roofs program. And then secondly, the solidarity program. Good morning, welcome. Please come and, you're the only ministry this morning, so come and take your seat right up front. Welcome, PS. Thanks for joining us again. You are the only ministry with us today. The matters to be discussed, as you would have been advised by the committee clerk, is the roofs program and the solidarity program. We only received your written submission this morning, so it's not too long, so we'll be going through it as the meeting progresses. But I would ask you to start, as usual, by introducing your team, and then by giving us a summary overview of the written report, which came to hand fairly late. So over to you, PS.
Morning, Chair, morning, members. Let me apologize for the late report. We got further requests from the Parliament on Friday, and so there was need for further clarification, as you would expect. We had a holiday, but we're trying to get the information to you as quickly as possible. So my apologies for the late submission.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to speak up a little louder. I'm not sure if I'm not hearing you so clearly. So I suspect the Hansard writers might be having a challenge as well. So, or just speak more directly into the mic.
Yes, morning, Chair. My apologies for the late submission of the report. We did get another set of questions on Friday, and we needed clarification. And in terms of preparing that response for you, it would take some time given we had a holiday. So we're trying our best as much as possible to fulfill the request. But with me this morning, I'm Diane Jennings, Acting Permanent Secretary, and beside me is Mrs. Audrey Dare Williams, the Chief Technical Director for Social Security, under whom the roofs program directly fall. We actually have our acting PFO, Ms. Shari Coombs, and behind we have Mr. Shaquille Walker, our Procurement Officer, Mrs. Sophie Pearson-Gale, our Path Accounts Director, and Mrs. Dr. Kamisha Anderson-Thomas, the Director in charge of Public Assistance, under which the Solidarity Program directly falls. And we have another team member who is supposed to be here, Ms. Lana Facey from the IT department. So in terms of the request, Chair, I need to say that the ministry continues to provide support for the operations of the roofs program, which is a $10 billion restoration of owner-occupant or owner-or-occupant family shelters. And that is a program under which we provide the grants ranging from $75,000, $200,000, and $500,000 to households who would have been affected by Hurricane Melissa. And we would have identified the categories for the support: minor, major, and severe. So I don't need to go into the background, but we are aware that October 28, 2025, we had that extensive damage to housing infrastructure across several parishes, mainly parishes of St. James, St. Elizabeth, Manchester, St. Anne, Westmoreland, Clarendon, Trelawney, Hanover, and to some extent St. Catherine. And the ministry would have implemented a range of interventions, and today we are focused on the roofs program, that's a program with direct responsibility under the purview of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. As we all know, it is just one of the programs under the Shelter Recovery Program, and that program outlines several other elements on the Shelter Recovery Program. and those other elements, the government-led repairs, the partner-led repairs, the National Housing Trust support, the modular housing solutions, and relocation or regularization where reconstruction might be necessary, and the roofs, which is our portfolio, direct portfolio. So in terms of housing damage, we would have had the JH Dino, which is a Jamaica household damage impact and needs assessment methodology. And that would have been used in collecting the data that we would have for those houses that would have been affected. And I must say, we had over 700 volunteers supporting alongside with our team from the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, including ODPEM, the municipal corporations, and other entities, Red Cross, and other parties to the Humanitarian Assistance Committee. And I would want to say and express on behalf of the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, and by extension the Government of Jamaica, our appreciation for the work that would have been done by all persons who would have supported us in this intervention of the assessment of the housing infrastructure. So your team would have asked us about matters relating to the type of damage by parish and by constituency. But before that, let me just indicate that having done the validation and clean assessments, to date we have 94,000 assessments that would have been cleaned and verified. And approximately 74,000 assessments had undergone geospatial cleaning and validation processes. And the disbursements under the roofs program is about $9.45 billion. We still have issues relating to reconciliation and verification as pertaining duplicate entries, incomplete household records, geospatial inconsistencies, and matters relating to TRN. So the information is provided to you, Chair and members, as it relates to the damage, minor damage, major damage, and severe damage, which would incorporate those that would have been completely destroyed. And it's there before you in terms of for each parish and the constituencies as requested. But just to note that we have 32,324 in the minor damage category across the island, 37,826 on the major damage, and 16,709 under the completely destroyed, and a grand total of 86,859 in the 9 parishes outlined below. So to note, we have over 81,000 that have redeemed benefits so far, and we have about approximately the 43,000 households, as I indicated, would have been verified. We have about 54,000 households remaining within the various stages of the verification and reconciliation. And just to note that up to this morning, we had over 116,000 assessments done to date. We would have had persons doing self-reporting, and so the parish teams are now involved in closing out on those assessments that would have been submitted through that medium. All right, in terms of I can now move to our next steps, and to note that we have had an interagency coordination taking place, particularly as it relates to our data consolidation. We would have had the support from the National Spatial Data Management Authority Agency, who have been assisting us in the verification of the data as it relates to our GPS location and data. So the support, that was phase one, and we would have identified, as I had indicated, issues relating to connectivity, system-related disruptions, as well as the matters relating to the TRN information and telephone numbers and the like. Quite a bit there. So in moving through to phase two, we would have had the cabinet giving us, the ministry, the approval to move to cash disbursement through direct deposit, and that is what we are moving towards now. And this phase two is expected for us to treat with the outstanding households awaiting the verification and the payment processing, and the cases requiring re-verification and additional validation, treating also with the vulnerable households with the unresolved recovery needs, and strengthening the operations and program systems, including reconciliation and reporting mechanisms. We are focused on cleaning the data through the various reconciliation exercises, resolving the duplicates, validating the identity of beneficiaries, and particularly as it relates to the TRN information, which is necessary for us to do the payment. And we are in consultation with the tax administration department, who are assisting us in that process. And we also are strengthening the geospatial verification processes. So phase two would be treating with the corrective measures that are necessary based on our experience that we would have seen in phase one. And we are looking to implement, well, we have a new system now, a new platform that will enable the parish team internally to work alongside the team members to go out in the field, the in-field operations key, and that's one of the areas that would have been indicated in the minister's sectoral debate in terms of the MPs coming on board with us and other stakeholders in the community to ensure that we get the information that is needed to validate and verify our household beneficiaries who are to receive this support. And we are enhancing our validation systems. We are looking to have an online portal where persons can input information as it relates to banking information. As when we went out into the field, that was not considered at the time, and so we are moving to get that information. The persons will be able to provide that data so we can provide those funds to them. And so we will be working closely with various partners in ensuring that we can move forward with this support. And the team is committed in ensuring this support, and we know we have the support of other stakeholders in this process. We want to move to the solidarity, or you want me to stop here?
What I would suggest is we pause here,
Okay.
take questions on the roofs program. When that is complete, then we move to the solidarity.
Okay.
So we don't, confuse both. Just by way of clarification, first of all, thank you for the overview. But by way of clarification, of the 9.5 billion that has been disbursed, could you say how that was allocated across the various payment modalities between digital vouchers, prepaid debit cards, remittance agencies, grant vouchers, and direct deposits?
Okay. All right. So we have 8.1 billion through the digital method. 8.466 to be exact.
8.466.
Yes, 8.466 billion. And then we have, through remittance agencies, we have almost $1 billion.
Okay, so the overwhelming would have been through
Oh,
those.
sorry, it's 408.
408 through remittance agencies, million.
And we have for prepaid cards, 526 million, 0.6 million.
So that pretty much covers
The 9.45,
99%
yes.
of it. The digital vouchers, when we had the meeting in the conference room, that was where you were explaining, I forget the name of the company, but I think it was a Trinidadian company that had a local subsidiary that had
Yes.
that had designed a system that could handle the hardware details in terms of what materials and so on.
Correct.
But I gather that system has now been abandoned.
Not at all, sir.
It has not been abandoned. So
We're
that
still utilizing it, sir.
it will be utilized for roofs too, for the next phase?
Well, so far we're in roofs 1. In terms of the next phase, that consultation is taking place in terms of how we will be utilizing that entity. But that's not yet confirmed.
Okay, so, but
we are doing cash deposits. So this system that was
set up to
set up
monitor the
was
materials
for the
and all that.
material, right. Uh-huh.
So maybe not that it has been cancelled, but it won't be as relevant for the next phase, which deals with strictly cash.
Yes.
Okay.
There was a cash component that was utilized by that entity, which is a 75,000 portion of it. And now we are going direct to accounts as much as possible.
Okay. All right. Members? Mr. Hines?
Good morning, all members from the ministry. My first question is I saw a response to a question we had sent regarding, the question is how many persons in each of the 63 constituencies have benefited to date, and you have listed a number of constituencies. And just to go to Clarendon, I see of the 6 constituencies, only Northern Clarendon is missing. Is there a particular reason? But the front of the document, you said that 899 persons were affected in Northern Clarendon, between minor, major, and totally. But then, for Solidarity Program, nothing has been done.
Clarendon North? Are you
Hold
making
on.
reference
I
to the
think you're-
damage?
No, in the Solidarity Program.
Is it?
Right, no. Remember, Hides, we had said we were going to deal with this Solidarity Program. We're going to take questions on the roofs program.
Oh, sorry.
first,
Let me go
then
to the
we
roofs
would
then.
move to the Solidarity Program.
All right, I apologize.
Okay.
And so you can save that question for that time. For the roofs program, do you still have persons actively doing assessments for phase 1?
Yes, as I indicated, as I indicated, member, that we would have had persons who would have made their requests through the self-reporting portal, and so we are still treating with those. Should be wrapping up those shortly.
And what about those who would have gone through the Member of Parliament's office that I would have submitted directly to the parish managers? or to the parish offices?
I'm sure those are being treated with as well. But if you have any issues, you can let us know.
Okay, thanks. That's it for now, Mr. Chairman.
Senor?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning to the team from MLSS.
Morning.
And welcome. My first question, the we pay component. Can you explain a little bit the selection process for the vendors who were used for the material aspect of it?
I can't speak to the details of that, but just to note that we would have provided them with a list of entities through the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, a list of businesses that would have met the criteria, meaning persons who are TCC compliant and registered, etc. That was a list that the ministry would have provided to the company. And so they would have made their contact and done their onboarding and so on.
So this list of businesses was selected by the Ministry of Industry and Commerce?
There were recommendations provided to us by the ministry in terms of the list of entities that were registered that we could start with.
Who will be able to share with whether this parliament or with us on a whole the criteria for the selection of these companies? And I note that you said in your initial response that you are not, it sounded as if you didn't have all the details in terms of the selection of the companies. Because, and I speak against the backdrop of a number of hardwares that are used for other government purchasing, government programs, who it would suggest are tax compliant, etc., and are convenient, but they were left off. So I want to get an understanding of why or how the selection was done objectively for my clarification.
I'll ask CTD, who is more involved in that area, to speak to that, please.
So, as the permanent secretary indicated, we got referrals from the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce as one of our partners with whom we work closely. But I wanted to add that we did ask the parish offices to make recommendations as well. So it wasn't purely the list from the MIC, but also we included merchants who would have been referred by our parishes. They are on the ground, they know the hardwares. So they would have made some recommendation as well.
So your parish manager's recommendations would have been a part of the selection, the process for determining which merchants would be used.
Right, but remember, the merchants have to agree. They have to want to be a part of the process as well. So even if we make a referral, if the merchant for some reason can say what all those are.
I'm not at the point of whether they agree. What I'm trying to find out from the ministry is your process for, of course, if you shortlist me and I'm not interested, that's a different thing. I'm trying to get an understanding of the process for even providing the opportunity. Because there are implications. When you, for example, select merchants that are hard to reach, as opposed to those that might have multiple locations, it increases the cost of getting the material to site to get the repair done, etc. So you're saying that a part of your process is to seek recommendation from your parish managers.
Right. From the parish offices, because they're more familiar with what happens in the parishes. And so we would refer them. Remember now that ultimately it's the third party who we have engaged who would be making the arrangements. So we refer, and typically they do act on our referrals as long as there is agreement to use the process.
Okay, so what you send to the third party is a referral, not
instructions.
A list of, okay.
No. But as I said, typically, from our experience, whenever we refer, because obviously we'd want, in fact, what we discussed is that we wanted a ratio of one hardware for every 500 beneficiaries. So that was the kind of ratio we were trying to get to. I don't think we're there yet. And although we have more than 80% of persons have collected the benefit, other issues have arisen why persons have not collected. But
do you believe it would have been beneficial to use the local knowledge available in your local authorities and your members of parliament who from time to time interface with the kinds of agencies that you're seeking to onboard? Would it have been beneficial, and would it be beneficial going forward?
as much information as we can get, it would be beneficial. I'm assuming that our parishes are in contact, or the MPs are also in contact with the parishes. So through that exchange, we would get referrals as well.
So it is your understanding that when you make a request of the parish manager, that that request would get to the members of parliament? Because, and I ask because there are other things that we're engaged directly on. It's just 63 of us. One email can cover, clicking send, everybody gets it. And it, in my mind, would be beneficial to the ministry to have as broad as possible that list of vendors. Because a common complaint from constituents who benefit is the cost associated with trucking, delivering material to their places of abode.
So agreed that, and we continue that process of onboarding as necessary. So when we still accept referrals, and if persons are willing and if the arrangement can be made, we still are in that process. We do not deny persons.
Thank you. So one of the challenges I identified on, the pages are not numbered, so I'm not able to say, but where exactly. But geospatial issues, can you go into that a little bit for me, for a layman who might not understand exactly what issues would come up under that category?
I guess we are all laymen with this one as well. But our director, we're not seeing her, so I'm figuring something has happened to her. She was invited to explain that as well for us. But we can get a further explanation. But the geospatial would have been the reading that we would have got at the time of the assessment at the house.
Right.
And that information would have been provided to us. What we are aware of was that the National Spatial Data Management Branch would have done an aerial overview of the damage, and so the information that would have presented to them would be able to provide us with a reading, whether these GPS readings are consistent or not.
Well, the clarification will help, because when someone comes to my office and says, I lost my roof, and I reached out to Ministry of Labor and I was assessed, and nothing happened since, I don't know how to respond in terms of geospatial issues, because I would imagine that if they would have been assessed, especially since this speaks to the cleaning up of data, etc. I'm not seeing how that becomes a barrier to them receiving a grant if there are geospatial issues, if there are issues in terms of just the mapping, especially since my understanding is that a physical verification is a part of the process. So that's what I'm trying to reconcile. So looking forward to that data. In Roofs 1, we still have quite a large number of persons who indicate that they have been assessed and they have not received a benefit. And they're not able to tell whether it is because they're in the lower category or it is an oversight. Does the ministry communicate with or attempt to communicate with persons who are in the category that will not receive a benefit?
So I don't have the figures with me to hand, but that's a substantive amount in terms of the persons who are below the minor category. That would be persons who have no significant damage or no damage at all. The intent is for us to But when they reach out to us in the office, we do provide them with that information. But the intent is for us to provide a list of names, maybe on the website or so on, to say for persons who will benefit. So those who don't see their names will be those who will not qualify.
Well, if you start by sharing that list with, again, your elected
yes,
representatives,
yes.
we would be in a, because I get a significant number of persons who come to my office on a weekly basis indicating that they applied, they were assessed, they've heard nothing. And they're trying to figure out how to move on with their lives, and the hurricane season starts again in another few days. So that would be helpful. Tell me, in terms of the next, give me a little clarity on the next steps in terms of those who have not yet been assessed or those who will be reassessed. I know I did receive a list of communities in my constituency that some consultations will need to be held with, but I have not received a list of names of the persons who would be a part of that consultation so I can assist. So when I go into those communities, the temptation whenever people come up to me and tell me that they received damage but have not received any assistance, the temptation is to say to them, whenever that assessment comes, come to the session and make your voice heard, because I don't have a list of those who fall below and as such were deliberately not included, and I don't have a list of those who will need reassessment. None of that is communicated. So please give us some insight on
that is where we are moving to in terms of engaging the members of parliament and other stakeholders, churches and other groups that can assist us in identifying the people. So we will be providing you with we would have provided the members of parliament with a list of those who would have been qualified, those who have been verified for payment. That list would have been sent out already.
Yes.
And so we're going to move to the next phase now. Once we have more clean data, we'll provide that to you. In addition, we'll be providing the list in terms of where we have the TRN that needs validation and so on for persons to be engaged in the field with us in getting and even in identifying some of these people.
In terms of your reassessment, what will you be, just one, if I may, and it's done.
Yes.
In terms of your reassessment, 7 months out from a hurricane, what exactly will you be looking at, since the quality of the data you'd be able to collect this far out would be significantly reduced?
And as I indicated, we have a system that we have developed, and that system will allow us to get the additional information that will enable more persons to be paid. We have, for instance, persons who would have submitted the incorrect TRN. And maybe under the pressure, being involved in a traumatic experience like that, they gave us the first name, but the last name spelled incorrectly, which would come up as a mismatch TRN, for example. So those are some persons who didn't add their maiden name, and the information on the TAJ would include that kind of information, which would make them. So those are some of the things we are trying to fix. We're looking at the data. We are still looking at damage because persons are still out in the field, as I indicated. That's still taking place, and we hope to wrap up. We have to wrap up at some point. Wrap up soon.
All right. Mr. Clark?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out, through you, if Madam Pierce would say that
I think Mr. Clark is waiting till he thinks he has your attention. Just hold it. Should he proceed? Yes?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. That I heard my colleague make mention of hardwares within his constituency that may not are overlooked. But we have to bear in mind that the hardware has to be registered PPC-wise, TCC, and any other registration for the government to do business. So that is one. Also, because I have the same situation where in persons say that, boy, they went down, they registered, persons came, do the assessment, and they have not heard anything. If you don't pay attention to the message that comes to your phone, then it might pass you by. In Montego Bay, I don't know if it happens anywhere else, you have persons who have said that when you question and query and do the inquiry, they said that they thought it was a scam. No, true. They thought it was a scam, so then delete the message. But truth be told, the message would have come in to say that this is what you need to do, this is the amount that you have been awarded.
Well,
So,
I guess with the history in Mobe, it's understandable that they would be skeptical and careful.
But it's not just St. James. We've been having
Yes,
that issue across.
So maybe the member could question a little bit deeper when it comes to.
All right, continue.
No, I do it, That's why I am able
right.
to share the
You're sharing
information
best practice.
with my.
You're sharing best practice. But any questions for the Ministry of Labour team?
No, I don't. I can give clarity to something that a member who is not au fait or doesn't understand a situation. If I have the experience, I can pass it on. That's all I'm doing to my newly minted
But
colleague.
Mr. Clark, you can take a horse to the water, but you cannot make him drink.
Well, I realize that.
And if he's not, he doesn't seem to like the taste of the water you're offering him. So, Mr. Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for the ministry. I know that there was a policy that says a citizen can't benefit from two different ministries at the same time. Have you reviewed that in light of some persons who would have wanted more than your maximum 500,000?
Okay, thank you, member. Just to note that we did say one benefit per household, and where you would have gotten a benefit, for example, under the roofs program, you wouldn't get it if you were eligible for a benefit on the NHT, for example. So yes, as it relates to Trans-Jamaica and TEF, those persons will receive support under phase 2. But persons who would have gotten under NHT or under the container solutions, that's another name, the rapidly deployed solutions, which will be the container homes, and the support under JDF, those will not receive under roofs. Other persons will, who are eligible.
P.S., I don't know if I missed it. Did you say what the scope of Roofs 2 was in terms of the budget? Is it similar to Roofs 1?
Because we have not yet cleaned all the data, and we have duplicates, as I had indicated. Once the data is clean, then we know exactly what it's likely to be. But we did make an indicative amount to the cabinet that will need additional support. Right now, we have $273 million additional to what we would have received for that initial amount that we are now processing to facilitate other persons getting the benefits.
The initial amount was 10 billion.
The initial amount was 10 billion.
Okay, so you don't expect Roofs 2 to be in that scale. It would be a much smaller allocation relative to Roofs 1.
It could be more than the 10 billion, but as I said,
it could be more.
Yes, but we need the clean data to make that supporting documentation for the amount.
All right, I think if I recall, and my percentage may not be exact, but there was about 40% of households that had, of the number that had been identified to be affected, that were not dealt with in Roofs 1. For whatever reason, either the assessments hadn't been completed or inconsistencies in the data, etc. So potentially, all those could be, who qualify, could be addressed in Roofs 2.
Certainly, that's the intention.
Okay. If there are no other questions, you have a follow-up.
Not a follow-up, but I just want to find out what is the ministry's plan for the citizens who are still living under tarpaulin, especially in Westmoreland and Hanover. I know you're going to be doing phase 2. Is it the same style of assessing them, or you're going to have persons on the ground doing a more aggressive assessment to try and assist those people quickly? They are without electricity because they don't have a physical structure to put the electricity in. So I just want to find out how we're going to treat those persons.
Yeah, and if I could just tag on to that question. A colleague MP shared a story of one of his constituents who are still under tarpaulin and was selected for jury duty, which required quite a lot of traveling.
Across parish.
They actually live in Westmoreland, but they were someone to Hanover. I didn't even realize you could do cross, or maybe he's right on the border, I don't know. But the fact that these persons are already living under considerable hardship, is there some way that they could be exempted from some of these things like jury duty, which we would normally expect people to live up to their civic obligations, but under the circumstances, it seemed unreasonable. So just in addressing that, you could also say if the Ministry of Labour has made any representation from the sub-list of persons badly affected to be exempt for a period of time from some of these obligations.
As it relates to their representation for jury duty, that's what they're asking me, Chair?
For things like jury duty.
Oh, well, each individual can write and indicate their circumstances. That's my experience. If they need a letter, then the JP or the maybe Minister of Religion or whoever is familiar with their circumstance can write and represent on their behalf, and showing the evidence why they wouldn't be able to participate.
Right, but I'm just saying you already have a list of those persons. It would be not difficult to provide that list and say, rather than go through each individual having to go through that process to get exemption, that whoever selects the jurors from the, I think it's from the voters list, is the base.
It wouldn't be our ministry, though, Chair.
It's the Ministry of Justice. What I'm saying is, if you...
Mike, you need to speak.
No, I can't hear you, Mr. Clark, if you would.
Yes, thank you.
I was saying to you, Chairman, that the ministry, Madam Pierce, would not be able to assist or to explain that situation to us here because she's really Ministry of Labour. It is Ministry of Justice would have to give some explanation or clarity to it.
No, but I'm saying since the Ministry of Labour would have the consolidated list of those persons badly affected,
but
if you could provide that list to the Ministry of Justice, and therefore, say for the next year or whatever the relevant period of time, those persons who are badly affected, not to add another challenge to them.
Whilst I understand what you are saying, Chairman, remember it is the court that does the court system that does
the court administrator then
that
could be
does
sent to the court
selection
administrator.
of the person. And it's not everything that you give them that they are going to take.
But nothing beat a try, but a
all right, if we leave it to that.
nothing beat a failure, but a try.
But what I would encourage persons to do, though, if they do have a challenge, when they write, because my experience is when they write to the court, they will consider their individual circumstances. And I think that would be easier than to submitting 116,000 names to the court.
Sorry, but I was piggybacking on Mr. Hines' question, so you could answer his substantive question or have him repeat it if you've forgotten.
Yes, could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, I was asking what is the plan by the ministry to deal with the parishes of Westmoreland and Hanover and maybe St. James, the persons who are still living under tarpaulin, in your phase 2, are you going to be using a different style, a more aggressive style, to get those persons up to speed? And I made the point that they are without electricity because they don't have a physical structure to get connected to the JPS grid.
Okay, so yes, we'll be employing a greater rigorous approach, and we will be looking to go into the field in the next 2 weeks to identify, what we're doing is to identify some of those clusters that seem challenges, and we could get, we have actually started getting the information for some persons. They have been sending that information to us. Our contact center has been doing a tremendous job in getting that kind of data from the persons, because we also have the issue where persons have, we can't contact them. The telephone number that they have given to us may have worked for a while, but you know, with the prepaid arrangement, if they don't use it for a certain time, they lose it. So that would be a change of number for us. So that is some of the challenges that we're having. So we're going out to find the people and to give them the support. And the MPs will be part of that process.
Yes.
Looking forward to seeing you all.
All right, just to follow up on the question asked by the chairman, and just to say that while I understand that it is a Minister of Justice issue, you are a Ministry of Labor and Social Security. It is a social issue. So while their telephone numbers are not working anymore, that they will receive maybe hand-delivered a note to say that you have jury duty. If you could liaise with the Ministry of Justice to say that these persons in these areas are having grave challenges just existing, and they are not in a position mentally or even physically to participate in natural justice. Allow me to ask a question, please. You had your turn. I did not disturb you. Allow me, please. Thank you. If you could ask the Minister of Justice to share with information. I know it's foolish to you. Not a lot of things make sense to you.
Jamaica now here.
I am asking that these persons are protected. We had an example of somebody traveling from Westmoreland to go to Hanover this morning, Lucy, to do jury duty. He's now living in Westmoreland. And they're saying if we can do something to protect them so that the system does not have them as being negligent and dishonorable, I think that will help in a general way. Then the specifics can come in terms of the Minister of Religion and all those persons helping these people.
Our Chair, what I can promise to do is to liaise with our counterpart in the Ministry of Justice and have that and have the discussion.
Mr. Clark, could you allow others to participate without but your mouth is loud and you're still interrupting them and distracting them.
So what I'll commit to do, Chair, is to have the discussion with my counterpart in the Ministry of Justice and...
Mr. Clark, please, have, if not respect for your colleagues, at least for the officials from the ministry. At least for the officials from the ministry. PS, please continue. Gentlemen, please. Please. PS,
right.
I apologize.
So, Chair and members, what I'll commit to do is to have a conversation with my counterpart in the Ministry of Justice, because maybe they could, send out communication to their persons and give greater consideration to the persons who have been affected in those parishes that may have a challenge in being present for jury duty. That's what I'll commit to do.
Thank you. Mr. Newell, you had a further question for this, or we can move to the Solidarity Program? All right. Could you just move on to the Solidarity Program now, PS?
Okay. So in terms of solidarity, there are some questions that would have come to us in terms of the persons in the 63 constituencies who have benefited to date and how many of the beneficiaries were elderly, vulnerable, and how many grants are provided to students, skills trainees, business persons, and what follow-up support was provided to the beneficiaries, and are there any amounts still remaining? So I won't get into the Solidarity Program except to say it's the 1 billion program that was announced in June 2025 to provide grants to persons who would have met the criteria, elderly, vulnerable, and persons who are not in school or in employment, and who are not currently benefiting from other programs such as PATH, NIS, social pension, and other Government of Jamaica assistance programs. So to move to your question, Chair and members, how many persons in each of the 63 constituencies have benefited to date? We would have provided you with that information, and to note that we have a total of 11,521 persons who would have benefited from the program. And to also note that there is an extension of the payment period up to the end of June, so persons are still accessing the benefit to date. In terms of the beneficiaries, how many were elderly persons, vulnerable, or aspiring persons by category? Wasn't so sure what that category was, but in terms of elderly persons, we had 3,459 young adults 18 to 35 who are not currently employed, in school, or receiving training, and I figured those were the aspiring persons. 4,523 applicants. For low-income informal workers, we had 9,881. And for adults without a birth certificate, we had 90. For persons requiring essential medical services but lacking the resources to pay for treatment, we had 31. 156 for micro-business owners, and 152 for persons with disabilities. So in all, we had over 18,000 persons, applicants. And for the elderly persons, as I'd indicated earlier, 3,459, and the other groups that you would have mentioned. For vulnerable persons in total, 10,310. And in terms of the grants provided to students, skilled trainees, and business persons, what we call the NEET category, the program did not include specific categories for students, skills trainees, or business persons. So, however, we had the category for young adults between the ages of 18 and 35, and who were not currently employed or in school or receiving training. We had 4,523 persons who were approved for payment. All right. For question 4, what follow-up support was provided to beneficiaries to enhance the long-term impact of the assistance? So the ministry has taken this group as a priority group. As you know, this is a group that would be considered usually excluded. They're not always easy to reach. They're not aware of some of our programs and so on. But through our outreach activities, through our job fairs, and other activities, persons will be able to receive the assistance that is necessary. We have already referred persons to other government agencies to address their documentation, their employment training, and other needs in real time. And so that is going to be another project for us in terms of the support. I would have indicated the category of the persons and what their needs were. So we would have referred 90 persons to the RGD. We have 3,459 persons who we are looking at for our own social pension programs, for programs within the National Council for Senior Citizens and PATH where applicable. And for those low-income informal workers, we have 9,881 applicants, and those are being referred, have been referred to HEART NSTA through our own labor market information systems. We're trying to match persons with available jobs and the employment services unit. For the medical indigent, we have 31 persons, and we have referred those to the NHF. We have, for the micro businesses affected by disaster, we had 156, and some are receiving support through our rehabilitation program and other initiatives. Persons with disabilities, we had 152 referred to our own entity, the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities. And as I had indicated, 4,523 for the support through HEART, the labor market information system, and our electronic labor exchange. For question 5, are there amounts still remaining from the 1 billion? Well, we can do the math. 11,521 beneficiaries were disbursed for payment, representing to date 230.42 million. So 73% of those persons have successfully confirmed receipt of their payment, and as I said, we have that extension up to June 30, 2026. And so for the persons who have not collected, we are encouraging persons so to do. And same for the roofs program.
You're ready for questions, or you're just pausing to have a sip of water? You're ready for questions, PS?
Sure. I
Okay.
think I was clear enough. I don't think I have much more.
All right, Mr. Newell.
Thanks, Chair. So I note, PS, that you stated that beneficiaries have been referred based on where they sit to the relevant agencies. What about persons who are not beneficiaries? Because I know there are a number of applications that were rejected for matters including maybe a different name on the ID from what is on the TRN due to marriage or something of that nature. Are those persons also being contacted and the referrals being done?
Yes. So the numbers I gave represent the total number of applicants to the program.
What's the
So we're treating with all.
Good. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I apologize. I was going through the report, the responses in your written responses, and I was distracted from what you were saying at the end. But just for clarity and trying to reconcile this with an email I received, I believe it was from Minister Charles or somebody in the ministry. Just for example, in Manchester Southern, the email that I received reflected 400 and something, what I interpreted to be approved applicants. I see 254 here on your table. I'm assuming that this reflects those that have already been disbursed, but that potentially, barring, challenges with data reconciliation, etc., it will eventually, by June 30th, go up to the 400 plus? Would that be a correct assumption?
254 would be those that have been approved for payment.
Those that have been approved?
Yes.
For the so approved and disbursed?
Yes.
So of the 400 plus who had applied, do I assume then that the balance will not receive anything, or some may still be in process of the administrative work that needs to be done?
So we are looking at those, Chair, because some may have not met the timeline for processing because of, some uploading of the information as it relates to like the attestation and the JP signing, those kinds of stuff. So we are treating each case by case, and where persons would have met the criteria, we're providing the support under the rehab program.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Dawes?
Good morning.
Could you speak directly into the microphone?
Good morning. Just to clarify something, of the $1 billion, only 230 million in approved payments so far?
Correct.
So we are at 23% of the funds. How long has this been programming going on?
June 2025.
And so we still have 75% of the funds unspent. And we are just at only about 63% of the applicants being selected for disbursement. What's the plan for spending the rest of the money with the, we're at about a year out now, and only 63% of applicants have got money, and you still have the bulk of the money there sitting, while the truth is that, we have many of our constituents calling us night and day asking when are they going to get their grants.
Okay, so we're at the end of a financial year, so the monies would have been returned, monies unspent would have been returned for debt reduction. And as I indicated to you, Chair and members, that we have the 11,521 persons who would have been approved for payment, and that represented the 230.4 million. So there are persons who would not have qualified for the program because they would not have met the criteria. So we had persons who were already on programs who would have submitted applications. So we would not have included those having not met the eligibility criteria. As I indicated, we are also looking at the persons who would have submitted their applications, who would have met the criteria but not have met it at the end of the financial year. We are treating with those persons. So we'll be treating with all the applicants who would have applied for the program.
So of the 37%, of the 30% of applicants who would not have been shortlisted for disbursements, no. Have you approximately what percentage of that number is are the applicants who were just not supposed to have applied at all because they're getting a benefit? Who else is left out of that 18,000 who really and truly, if we get all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed, they can be eligible for disbursements?
And let me just add my own experience to that. I had been asked by the ministry to facilitate a sign-up for applicants at my constituency office. It was the ministry that ran it. I just provided the location and helped to put out information. The response was overwhelming. But it turned out that many persons who showed up didn't understand the criteria. For example, there were a number of students who were attending tertiary institutions, and that was a disqualification.
Yes, that was not a criterion.
And I personally couldn't understand the logic of that. Why just by virtue of you attending a tertiary institution, you were disqualified from the assistance? Maybe the criteria could have been loosened somewhat to allow the full use of the 1 billion, because people who were genuinely in need, even to continue in tertiary education, seem to have been disqualified just by virtue of the fact that they were enrolled at a tertiary institution. And I couldn't understand why the criteria was so tight, given that we don't have unlimited funds to assist tertiary students anyway. So it's not like they could have got something. They were guaranteed assistance through another program. And given that we only use 20% of the funds, as Dr. Dawes pointed out, could we widen the net or widen the funnel, so to speak, of persons who would qualify?
So, Chair and members, the Solidarity Program had its specific criteria in terms of the persons, the target group that we're trying to reach. We're trying to reach persons who were not normally aware of some of the programs, or who didn't even have information, or just weren't able to reach the ministry to access the programs, persons who are not usually included. And that's why we would have identified those groupings: the elderly persons, the persons with disabilities, persons who are not in school. Because if you're in school, it means that you were knowledgeable of opportunities that are available to you. We also had programs in the ministry that support persons who are already in school. Plus, we also have persons with heart, we have support from the members of parliament and so on. The aim was to address persons who didn't have any support at all. So that's why we didn't broaden it to include some of these groups that you're making mention of, because we're trying to reach those who would normally not be considered for the programs. So we have other programs, other suite of programs that can address some of those groups that you would have mentioned.
Well, I don't know about the other MPs, but I can tell you for tertiary students, the suite of programs are completely inadequate. And the quantum of assistance is very small relative to the cost of a tertiary education, even tuition alone. Anyway, Dr. Dawes, were you want to add a follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, PS, I have a fundamental problem with this. We're just coming from, we're still reeling from the revelation that there's $1.4 billion of donor aid barely spent. And now we are being informed that there is $770 million unspent, earmarked for the most vulnerable in our society. Something about the conceptualization of this program was wrong from the outset. If people are suffering and we are sitting on $770 million that just went back into the consolidated fund or for debt payment, something has to be done about this program. It's clearly not working. The persons who it is meant to help, they're not receiving the help, and the money is just sitting there. I have a serious problem with having this much money sitting down, and Jamaicans are suffering. That's all I have to say.
Let me say, Chair, it was a one-off program. This program was also interrupted by the elections. It was also interrupted by Hurricane Melissa. And that's why we have made every effort in all the persons who would have applied for the program to treat with their situation. The intent is for us to put a special intervention to treat with this group. So this group is a group that we will continue to support in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, and to ensure that the most vulnerable persons are getting the support that is needed. Persons who would have met the eligibility criteria.
All right. Are there, Mr. Newell, Yoram?
I thought to leave it, but it would be remiss, because I think in this, in closing out a program, we have to look back and say, what are the things we learn, the lessons learned, so that in designing a future program we can consider. And oftentimes, there is a particular grouping that gets left out of programs designed to support the vulnerable. And in the United States, oftentimes it is single mothers who are working minimum wage and have to decide, do I remain on welfare so I can take care of my child, or do I go to work where I can't afford daycare? I had a situation where a constituent, she's not on path, living in Kingston, going to school, etc., went over to try and access Solidarity. And I am not clear that the range of programs properly accounts for somebody who is trying to drag themselves up out of the gutter, so to speak, and needs that additional help, just that additional assistance to go through. And also the premise, the idea that someone in school has the additional knowledge in terms of programs is not always so, because all of us might be able to relate to the fact that people come in our office daily, weekly, inquiring on things that we would have thought that they should have known about. And the idea that the persons who you were targeting are not the ones who would have benefited from members of parliament is also probably not accurate, because some of the faces and names that turn up for a program like Solidarity may be faces and names that we would have been familiar with in others. So there's nothing in the application that says if you benefited from some assistance at the MP's office, then you're not eligible. I'm just speaking to what you said earlier. So there's nothing in the application that rules you out on that ground, but I think some flexibility is needed to treat with those who are trying and might need that additional, that $50,000 might be
20.
What decides,
20.
what determines whether they're able to complete a semester.
20,000.
That $20,000, sorry, might be what determines, yes, might be what determines whether you're able to afford some additional ramen noodle on that campus to get you through for that semester or therefore, thereabout.
Understood, Chair, and I don't want to belabor the point, but what I'm saying is that the persons who we're trying to reach are the persons who were almost unreachable. And so those students, Ministry of Education provides support, other persons provide support, not saying they're not in need, but the persons who were targeting for the Solidarity program was to try to get them into some of our own programs that they could qualify, but were not aware of those programs. So far, we have persons who would qualify for social pension, but they had no knowledge about that support that was available. We had persons with disabilities and those other persons who would never normally reach. But I take your point.
Based on your research of the space or the data you have on the space in terms of those who would have been targeted, because clearly that 1 billion would have been informed by a target, by a particular target number of persons, of which you've reached less than 30% of what that target, I imagine, would have been. Are you satisfied with that as an outcome? But in addition, will there be a Solidarity tool to try and reach those additional folks who, that 70-odd% or more, who would be in the pool but may have not been reached, and who still may not know about social pension or any of the other things that you mentioned?
Okay, I can't say what Solidarity 2 will look like, but as I indicated, the target group that we have, we still will be focusing on them and giving them the priority. We did do our assessment, and we did identify some of the challenges, and also to note that we were utilizing a new Gov payout system, which was a pilot, and that itself had its own challenges. So, and that would have also prevented us from rolling out further that program. So the assessment will look at all aspects, including where the ministry would have been directly responsible, or entities that were supporting us on the program, and how we move forward. So we have taken those into consideration.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, PS. There don't seem to be any more questions, so our appreciation to yourself and your team, and we're going to continue on our agenda. You're welcome to stay or leave. I'm sure you have other urgent matters to attend to. So we thank you. Okay. Members, we're going to any other business. And in terms of getting the attendance of ministries and agencies, I think we have to give them a lot of notice, because we've been getting responses that the dates that we set are not convenient, etc. So we earlier, for the benefit of members who came late, we earlier agreed that the Housing Agency of Jamaica would come on the 17th of June or the 24th of June. So we're having 2 dates open depending on what is mutually convenient. I'd like to suggest, because it triggered my memory in terms of the discussion about tertiary students. Tertiary students, certainly in constituents like mine, it is the exception that persons are able to go to tertiary institutions. And I'm not limiting it to university, I'm talking training, other training institutions. But those who do make a profound difference to both their and their family's future. Right now, as far as I can tell, the only agency that really addresses it in terms of serious allocations of money is the Students' Loan Bureau. But my experience as an MP over years is that for many persons, taking student loans, depending on the degrees that they're taking it to get, often ends up being a debt trap for them. And people have become very apprehensive. You know, I have cases of persons who originally borrowed a little over $1 million. And today, 10 years on, having paid hundreds of thousands in payments, now over 4 million. And the degrees that they took out these loans to get was just, it wasn't a good return on the investment, let us just say. Certainly not on a loan investment. And I would love for us to invite the Students' Loan Bureau to attend, to get a better understanding of their philosophy, because they really seem to be for those who don't have families that can afford to pay university tuition or pay other teachers' colleges, etc. And often it requires boarding as well, because there are none in proximity to the community where they live. This seems to be the major. Yes, there's a 50,000 grant offered through the Ministry of Education or something from the CDF, but minimal relative to what it costs for somebody to do that. So I'm going to suggest to the committee that on either of these 2 dates that we have identified, we invite the Students' Loan Bureau to attend. Maybe the chairman and the executive director, or whoever they want to send from the bureau to address some of these concerns.
Thank you, Chair. I would just suggest that in addition to SLB, perhaps the Ministry of Education be invited as well, only because in addition to that $50,000 program that you mentioned, there was a program under the National Youth Service, which is now HEART, called the Access to Higher Education Program, and that sought in the 2013 to 2016 period, it sought to pretty much provide a fully paid tertiary education to some of the most vulnerable students. And it was in partnership with a number of tertiary institutions. Northern Caribbean University was one. Caribbean Maritime University was another. Brownstone Community College was one. And the College of Agriculture, Science and Education was one, where the schools waived a particular amount, allowed persons to do a work and study. NYS paid a particular amount, and another amount came from, I can't recall where now. But the end result was that students were able to, through a combination of work and grants, were able to access a fully funded education. So I would love to find out whether, and it was always intended to be a pilot. It targeted between 100 and 200 students initially. I would love to hear from the Ministry of Education whether any additional thought has been put in to how we deal with the poorest.
We can ask them about the range
of programs
facilities that are there to range of programs to assist tertiary students. So the same day that we have the Students' Loan Bureau, we could invite the Ministry of Education and whatever the relevant departments and agencies. It falls within the Ministry of Education, right? So you're clear on that, Ms. Hunter? All right, so the next two meeting dates are the 17th and the 24th. I'm just here wondering whether we should space it a little better. Is the 1st of July available? So let's say the 17th and the 1st of July. So we give 2 weeks, so it's not too pressuring on the support teams. The 17th and the 1st of July, and we can, those two sets of topics, one will be the one for the Housing Association of HAJ, so Housing Agency rather, HAJ, and the other will be for the Students' Loan Bureau, which I believe falls under the Ministry of Finance, or used to, and Students' Loan Bureau and the Ministry of Education and HEART, specifically with respect to programs available to assist tertiary students financially. Yes, so we're all decided on that? Okay, now you, Mr. Newell, you have something?
Yes, yes. Chair, I know HAJ came about. I was a part of that conversation at the last meeting. And subsequent to the meeting, I had a sidebar, and I was advised that a major issue HAJ may have in dealing with some of those settlements and the infrastructure needs, etc., was funding from the head ministry. And so I'm wondering whether to avoid or to preempt the possibility of hearing, well, we don't have the resources, have to talk to the head ministry. I'm wondering whether we should reinvite the Ministry of Housing to be a part of the conversation with when we have HAJ here.
Yes, that's actually prudent because the permanent secretaries usually don't like to be bypassed to go to a department or agency. And it's often useful because they would have a broader overview of what's available through the ministry. So it would be HAJ and the Ministry of
Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development
that this agency falls under?
Yes, but perhaps specifically the housing division, if one exists
of the Ministry
within
of
that ministry.
Economic Growth.
Yes.
Okay.
And I apologize to my good friend from St. James because I will be very parochial in that conversation.
All right. There being no other business, and we have set the date of the next two meetings as the 17th of June and the 1st of July, both Wednesday mornings at 10. I would just be left to thank you for your attendance this morning, and to note that at 11:39 the meeting has terminated. Thank you.